Mr. Speaker, at the start of this session, His Excellency the President issued an unambiguous challenge. He called on us to show leadership that inspired confidence and that furthered the cause of equality. And he asked us to present the people with a specific vision and prudent policies. In his words, they deserved no less. From day one of this session, Mr. Speaker, the opposition has stumbled over that bar of expectation. They've fallen face first into their usual chorus of criticism, devoid once again of any logic or ideas. For almost 4 years, Mr. Speaker, all we've heard from that side of the House is the government should not do this, the government should not do that, without a single credible strategy to offer as an alternative. 4 years. And they do not have one clear or sensible policy to show for it. Instead, Mr. Speaker, they've stuck by a simple playbook. First, they lie about what the government is doing and what it intends to do. Then they make outrageous demands, such as telling government to spend more while also reducing revenues. And then they sprinkle in the bizarre pie-in-the-sky promises with no mention of how to fund them, as you heard yesterday from the Attorney General. Dreams are free. Mr. Speaker, the people of Fiji know that their dreams are free, but policy must be practical. But it gets even worse, Mr. Speaker, because no sooner did His Excellency warn us of the politics of personalization, did some members of opposition begin making personal attacks against him, attacking him personally, attacking his speech and his philosophy, even questioning his nomination by my government. It astounds me that this week we heard some in the opposition claim that he has been appointed on the basis of his chiefly status. Tuna Mosi is missing from this morning session, Mr. Speaker. I would like him to hear this. This by the very people who have loudly lamented the absence of chiefly privileges in the 2013 Constitution. Mr. Speaker, I need not defend His Excellency from these pretenders. His achievements speak for themselves. He has shown real leadership, a strong understanding of business. He has used his traditional leadership role to raise awareness on the climate and oceans crisis. He has shown everything we deserve from a modern leader in Fiji. Let me be clear, Mr. Speaker. We never have appointed anyone on the basis of their last name, their family pedigree, or based on where they come from in Fiji. And we never will. Our president is not a Fijian who has coasted through life on the basis of his birthright. He has built his own name and his own career through his own hard work and the choices he has made. Time and again, Mr. Speaker, he has gone well above what was required or expected and shown exemplary leadership in service of the national interest. He engages with everyone through a down-to-earth approach. That is why he is loved. That is why we nominated him. That is why we voted for him, because he has proved he has the merit to lead, just as his immediate predecessor, His Excellency the President Chochi Konusi Konrote, who is not a chief, had earned the right to lead. And you, Mr. Speaker, as well showed the nation that same level of merit. So DELPA and the opposition can fathom that sort of thinking. They do not believe in merit-based leadership. They have never sought it. They have never had it. And we've seen the clear results. Their last leader simply ran out on his voters, just woke up one day and decided to quit. I guess it was all too much for him. And their current leader can barely run his party. So why on earth would anyone want him to govern the country? Tuna Mosi had been vocal, very vocal about the appointment of Tui Madwata. I would be the laughingstock of Fiji and the region if I was to appoint Tuna Mosi as president of this nation. I talked about the current leader can barely run his party, so why on earth would anyone want him to govern the country? He's sitting on top of a collapsing house of cards, as we've heard in the last 12 months. And the entire deck is, of course, filled with jokers. All jokers. The only values the remaining members of this dwindling party seem to share is a contempt for good government and a complete disregard for the value of merit. But merit matters to my government, Mr. Speaker, and it matters to the young people of this country. They are sick and tired of the same old frauds, lamenting the good old days when they made all the rules simply because they were born to power. That era is over. And it is quite rich to hear someone like Honorable Bulanoda attack our President's legacy by talking about profits at Fiji Pine. Honorable Bulanoda has 60 million reasons why he should keep his mouth shut. Because he was on the board, and that's exactly how many dollars Fiji Pine ran in losses. My government, Mr. Speaker, my government had to right that sinking ship and turn Fiji Pine into a profitable enterprise. And our landowners have record-breaking dividend payment to show for it. Honorable Bulanoda also called for Fijians to fear vaccination and instead put faith in God. Mr. Speaker, I am a man of faith as well. The fact that humanity is able to protect itself from COVID-19 is because the heavenly powers that be allowed it to be so. No bogus interpretation, Bulanoda, of religion should prevent people from protecting themselves against COVID-19. Every Fijian must get vaccinated. And to dissuade them is to condemn them to disease and even death. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Lalambalabu complained to members of Parliament that the ceremony of Ngalangalobi should not have been held for the outgoing President, His Excellency Chochi Konusi Konrote. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, his feeble attempt to weaponize culture was obvious to everyone. And I'm sure that if the Ngalangalobi ceremony was not done, he would have been quick to criticize that move as well. That's how he thinks, Mr. Speaker. But what he does not realize is that by politicizing our culture, he is the one who erodes it most of all. And Mr. Speaker, from Honorable Prasad, we hear the usual 20-minute laundry list of complaints with zero alternatives and zero game plan. His contribution, Mr. Speaker, his contribution can be summed up as follows. I am desperate to enter government at any cost. I'll say anything
Order.
I'll say anything to get there. I am desperate to enter government at any cost.
Order.
Listen, Honorable Prasad, listen. I am desperate to enter government at any cost. I'll say anything to get there. And I'll jump into bed with anyone to do so. Even the originator of coup culture in Fiji. Mr. Speaker, the people of Naindovi, Zulu, can attest to that. He knows that, Mr. Speaker. There's been a...
That's the line you're going to use in the next campaign.
There's been a lot of quotes. There's been a lot of quotes lately.
Don't worry about me.
There's been a lot of quotes, Mr. Speaker, lately. I'd like to quote from someone who wrote in the papers just a couple of days ago about Biman, Honorable Biman, who says, unsatisfied Biman. Someone shared me a chit-chat that looked like Biman Prasad's speech was written by a child. It is full of complaints. Just like Indian drama TV serials. Never satisfied.
Don't tell me this. I know you are reading all this.
I'm just reading from a quote, Mr. Speaker. I didn't write that. But, Mr. Speaker, the award of the most reckless member of the week indisputably belongs to the man himself, Mr. Honorable Nico Nawaikula. His call to scrap the TLTB is more than insane. Mr. Speaker, it is the most serious threat to the Itoke since the government, Ngarse government stole land out from under landowners. Honorable Nawaikula had no such view when he worked for the TLTB, and he has provided no alternative for dealing with land issues. We have to assume he expects individual land-owning units to deal with issues among themselves. That would not only decimate the value of Itoke land, but do away with all the checks and balances provided by TLTB and the Ministry of Lands. It goes to show there are no lengths he will not go to seek power and create disquiet among our communities, even if it costs the Itoke people their income, their welfare, and their future, even if it undermines the economic system in Fiji. I had talked of Honorable Prasad. Mr. Speaker, I'm not finished with him.
Carry on. Read more.
I'm just taking my time.
Read more.
I'm looking at the Hansard report. They did. But Honorable Prasad talked about corruption, Mr. Speaker, and he says, let me talk about corruption and sleaze, which His Excellency the President referred to. After all, we were told after 2006 coup that this is the clean-up campaign. We are going to clean up corruption. You do not have to ask the opposition, Mr. Speaker. We do not have to provide the evidence. All the evidence he says is sitting in government. Of course, we have the evidence. And he goes to talk about the Accountability and Transparency Commission. 8 years on, no Accountability and Transparency Commission has ever been appointed. I don't know why he went to such great lengths to talk about Accountability and Transparency Commission with regards to corruption, because if he wants to know what corruption is all about, Mr. Speaker, all he has to do is stand up, walk through the door, go down the road, he'll end up at the University of the South Pacific. When you talk about corruption, you're targeting us. That's personal. That's personal. Hold on. That's all he has to do, Mr. Speaker. If he wants to really find out what corruption is all about, stand up, walk through the door, down the road, he'll end up at the University of the South Pacific. Our university students are waiting for him to sort out the problem, to sort out the con job that is part of, that is now brought about a big corruption scandal in the University of the South Pacific.
Prove that you are you created the mess there. Calm down.
Order.
I was talking about, and he also, if you listen to his speech in the last couple of days, Mr. Speaker, conspiracy theory man, this man. He's talked about what are we going to do if we lose the election, as if we're going to do anything other than step down. But Honorable Nikono Wekula has picked up on that. And he's talked about
review the constitution.
Shut up. Shut up. This is his comment in the last couple of days. History is also telling us that for constitution to be permanent will depend on the acceptance and acknowledgement of the people. But then he goes on to say, even the military has a constitutional role and responsibility to remove government. That is even worse. That's what he says. It is not a democracy anymore with a provision like that. I don't know where you got that from, Mr. Speaker. When he was questioned here, and he said, well, read your constitution. That's what he said. With lawyers like him, we have to worry about our constitution. Mr. Speaker, it's a shame that our national discourse has been dragged down to this level. That we have to slog through this deluge of absurdity, lies, fanciful theories, and petty concerns, rather than discuss the real issues our people face. So I now like to speak directly to our people on a topic of actual importance, a topic that is being spoken about at every dinner table, every community hall, and indeed every board meeting in the country, which is where do we stand on our economic recovery. This week, Mr. Speaker, has marked the beginning of the end of this terrible pandemic for Fiji and for the first of many better days ahead. I want to thank the Fiji Airways staff, the Fiji airports employees, our hotel and tourism workers, the drivers, the doctors, the nurses, the police officers, and RFMF personnel, and every other Fijian whose combined team effort helped us reopen our border to tourists this week. We were proud and, most importantly, prepared to welcome those fully vaccinated, COVID-tested travelers from Australia. And that same goes for the visitors who will arrive from our other green list countries. Those first two flights from Sydney, Mr. Speaker, on Wednesday, represented nearly 2 years of careful preparation, including the decisive effort to vaccinate nearly every adult in Fiji. We worked hard to earn every smile beneath the face masks of our visitors and to fill the seats of the plane that brought them here. And since then, 5 more flights have arrived from Melbourne, Sydney, and LA. This is a victory, Mr. Speaker, that is shared by far too many people for me to thank here, including, in no small part, the 560,570 Fijians who came forward to get both jabs of a vaccine. The people's trust in science and this government's sound leadership has earned us the right to reopen our borders. It has earned us the right to fill our hotels. It has earned us the right to a recovery, and that is exactly what every Fijian will get. And they will get it because they have a government that has produced the stability and supplied the decisive leadership necessary to deliver it. When we drew up the strategy to reopen our border, COVID-19 had already produced 11 different variants. 11, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, of course, we expected a 12th. And we have been monitoring the Omicron variant carefully since it was discovered. Like the other variants before it, there is no evidence to suggest it poses a serious threat to those who are fully vaccinated. So if you are not vaccinated, get vaccinated. So we have adopted measures that are proportionate to the threat it poses when it does inevitably arrive at our shores. We quickly increased the quarantine requirement for travelers from over 150 red list countries, and we are deploying boosted doses to our frontline workers and to the most vulnerable Fijians. Soon, we will make booster shots available to more adults, and we are pressing ahead with a campaign to vaccinate our children over the age of 12. Of course, every Fijian must also continue to keep our discipline. We must continue to wear our masks in public spaces, keep good physical distance, and wash our hands often. So, Mr. Speaker, let's review the record. We laid careful plans to free Fiji from the grip of this crisis. We worked hard with our partners to secure the vaccines we needed, and we showed the leadership to deploy them quickly. And we prepared the strategy to restart tourism. That is our record. And I shudder to think what would have happened to Fiji if the opposition was in government during this crisis. I heard Honorable Ngavoka talk about the many things he's going to do when they get into government. But there's one thing he forgot to mention, the fact that he should be worried about the group on his side. They're ready to stab him in the back. But not only that, also stab him in from the front. So he should be worried about that. Unless he do that. So, as I said, order. As I said, Mr. Speaker, I shudder to think what would have happened to Fiji if the opposition was in government during this crisis. They can't figure out how to act as an opposition, much less lead as a government. They would have been fighting amongst themselves about what to do every step of the way. In fact, the only thing they've managed to unite around is the effort to halt our recovery. They have tried everything in their power to stir up panic, undermine confidence, and distract us from the good news of this week. Some going so far as to demand we shut the border entirely. Somebody is missing from the back there. including Honorable Tambuya, and a soon-to-be leader. They want to scare people into believing that they face a false choice between lives and livelihoods. 2 years ago, Mr. Speaker, that was true. Today, it isn't. We can protect them both, and we will. Mr. Speaker, the experts predict that we will see dozens of variants of the virus in our lifetime. It would be easy for me to slap my desk and say, shut the border every time a new one emerges. That may satisfy some, but it would be reactive leadership and terrible policy, as we've found out. It would condemn our people to live in a perpetual state of uncertainty and set Fiji towards becoming a small, weak, and isolated nation. My opponents may accept it. I will not. Mr. Speaker, we have to make decisions based on what we know. And what we know is that all of these variants of the virus present the greatest threat to those who are not vaccinated. As for the rest of the opposition, what they do not say is far more telling than what they do. If they really cared about the lives of our people, they would join the call to vaccinate the small holdouts of unvaccinated adults in the country. They would help us urge parents to have their children vaccinated. But that is not what they spend their time doing. We have to ask why. Why don't they use their platform to advocate vaccinations we know will support our recovery? They don't, Mr. Speaker, because they know that every job we create and every dollar we help Fijians to makes them more and more irrelevant. They want to hold Fiji hostage to a state where they feel they stand a chance at obtaining power. And that is why they are erecting every roadblock possible to stall our recovery. That is why they tried to sabotage every measure of support we offered our national carrier. We did not listen. And today, they should be listening. Fiji Airways is the only airline flying tourists into Fiji. And our fortunes are not left to the whims of foreign carriers. That is why they wanted to keep people locked in their homes and keep the doors of our businesses locked when we knew that made no medical sense. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, they will do or say anything possible to derail our recovery now. We will not let them. We will not be deterred. We will not fail the people who have chosen us to lead them. Humanity has become better and smarter at dealing with this virus, Mr. Speaker, and so has Fiji, because we prepared for this moment. Millions of dollars will be coming into the country over the coming weeks and months. Those dollars will go, as Honorable AG has said, will go to our businesses, to our market vendors, to our tourism workers, to our farmers, and to Fijians in all industries as the benefit of this recovery ripple, through our economy. And the combined strength of our economy, Mr. Speaker, which is far more diverse than it was 20 years ago, will help government to extend even more services, build more roads, and strengthen more infrastructure. It will help us move more vulnerable communities, build more seawalls, and expand more sustainable industries in forest and agriculture and aquaculture and cutting-edge industries like business process outsourcing, BPO, in the ICT sector. It will set Fiji back on the path of prosperity and towards a greener and bluer and more resilient society. Mr. Speaker, we have overcome much. the global financial crisis, more than a dozen serious cyclones, and a global pandemic. Through it all, the people have known they have a government that will support them when they need it and empower them to turn adversity into opportunity.
Here, here.
A government with a plan, not to simply print more money, but to unite them, but to grant them the chance at earning a decent living for themselves. Not to divide people, Mr. Speaker, but to unite them in common cause. Not to move backwards, but forwards, towards better infrastructure, better services, and the lives and the future all ordinary Fijians want for themselves.
Here, here.
Over the coming year, Mr. Speaker, we will advance a legislative agenda that continues that march of progress. That is how we lead, by delivering on our promises of progress to the people. And I'll make a deal with Honorable Garangara Tambua. Unfortunately, she's not here, but she may be listening and watching this very moment. You keep coming up with scatterbrained theories about how we govern and continue cursing children, we'll keep running the country and taking Fiji forward.
Yeah, yeah.
We will keep our laser focus on the bread and butter issues affecting our people and the long-term challenges we know are headed our way. We will not distract the nation with small issues, but rather focus on a holistic national approach. We will pass policies that make sense, that can be funded, and which are part of larger agenda to build a stronger, more caring, and more resilient country.
Yeah, yeah.
And Mr. Speaker, when the Fijian people vote in our third genuine national election in history, they will vote on this government's record of strong and steadfast leadership.
Yeah, yeah.
On the recovery we've helped deliver, and on the real policies and practical promises that we should put before them. Before I take my seat, Mr. Speaker, I would like to once again thank His Excellency for his gracious speech. And for those on the other side, Honorable Chanyu Somate is offering his statement from yesterday for you to read. Thank you. Thank you, sir.